I have a short presentation and a hopefully short demo too that I was hoping that you'll find interesting. It's so great that Bishwa was talking about Kubernetes and stuff because I'm going to talk about that too. I'm going to talk about DevOps and I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff that is not yet in Azure Government, but it's coming soon. And some features that were announced at Build too. So I'm Diego Lapiduz. I'm the Chief Information Security Architect for Azure Government. I'm an open source advocate. One of the things that I like to do is try to figure out ways that we can make the government more efficient by using open source, by using modern techniques, by using Agile, DevOps, and all this cool new stuff, right? So who here is familiar with DevOps? Okay, good one of you. Who is doing DevOps in production or some flavor? Okay, not that many. Okay. So I think that the idea behind DevOps is how to make it so developers are more productive when they're building applications, right? And how can they get to operate their applications faster, and how can they have releases faster and get feedback sooner, right? One of the problems that we have with that in government is that we have compliance and security, and that usually doesn't work very well with speed, right? Has anyone had that issue before? Yes? Yeah, I see some head nods, so that's good. So one of the things that I've been working on for a couple of years now is how can we marry these two ideas? There's a whole movement around DevSecOps, in bringing in security and compliance to the DevOps toolchain. And that is kind of what I wanted to show today, show what sort of tooling we have around that. My slide got a bit whacked with the change of PowerPoint, but it's okay. The whole idea behind DevOps is your developers develop. That's what they do. You have a pipeline that builds your code, and you test for software stuff, but you can also add things there like check for policies, check for security, check for usability, right? And that's kind of what I want to talk today. And then it goes to deployment, and then you operate, you monitor, you get feedback, and you go back to planning, right? And so what can you do in that step that you're checking the code, that you're making security part of this pipeline on DevOps, right? I brought in some ideas. One of the things that you can do is do source code validation. So, for example, test if there's any, we call it smells, right? Like if anyone is doing like a call to a service that shouldn't be there, or like do like very, let's say, non-standard usages in development. So all of that you can capture there. You can do dependency analysis on your code. Say if a package that you're using is unsecure. You can do OWASP. Are you familiar with OWASP? Okay. Some security testing on the application itself. And the whole idea of this is that you have this muscle of always be deploying, and by doing that, if there is a security incident, you can fix it and deploy, and it's going to be super fast to get there, right? You don't have to wait 3 months, 6, a year until you deploy your patch for your service. And that's, if you're familiar with the Equifax hack or a lot of other hacks that happen, is because they didn't patch their systems. At Azure, one of the things that we do now is that we support a lot of open source tools. And we had Terraform here. We had a couple. There you go. There you go. Yeah. We supported a lot of different tools. We contribute to a lot of different tools, and I think that we're now the #1 corporate contributor to open source. So I think that's pretty cool. And the whole idea here is like, the same way that you have continuous integration, same way that you get continuous delivery, how can we get to continuous security, right? So I'm gonna jump into my demo and see if we can make that work. I'm gonna be using a lot of features that are pretty new. So if they don't work, you're gonna have to forgive me or not. So one of the things that we notice is that a lot of users want to do DevOps projects, and we released this feature at Build, I think, it's called DevOps projects. We are very original with our names. So like our virtual machine service is called virtual machines. Our load balancers are called load balancers. This new tool is called DevOps projects, and it's just that. You go in and you say, I want to start a new project, and you choose what type of project you want to start. I'm going to start a Node.js project because I'm cool. Not. For each sort of language, it has a couple of different options. So like, for Java, you have Spring or the native Java app, or here in Node.js, you have Express, Sales, or just a regular Node app. And then you can choose, what I think is pretty interesting, that ties back what Bishwa was talking about, is you can choose how you want to deploy this. You can choose to use Kubernetes, web apps, or a Windows web app, right? I want to choose Kubernetes, and let's say Meetup. And the cool thing about this is it ties your Visual Studio account to your Azure account. If you don't use Visual Studio, you can do all of this with GitHub or other source code tools. Has anyone used Visual Studio Team Services here, VSTS? GitHub? Okay, a lot more people use GitHub. Something else? What else? Okay. Bitbucket. Anyone using Bitbucket? Okay, there you go, thank you. So you can you can do these same things that I'm doing here with any of this tooling that you're doing already. It's just gonna be configured a bit differently, right? I'm gonna just use Azure Meetup. I'm on the wrong account. I'm gonna create a cluster, and this is gonna create a bunch of different things for me, and it's gonna tie it all together, right? Like you were gonna hoping that you were expecting this. I have a prepared cake, and I'm gonna open that up so you can see what this looks like. It takes about 15-20 minutes to see this working, so I'm not gonna wait. I have a project here called Azure Meetup. And what this has is a CICD pipeline, right? Can you see the screen there? It has a CI/CD pipeline, a Kubernetes cluster, an applications insight instance that is monitoring all that, and a code repository that has the code for the application, right? So I can visit this application, and it's just a Node.js application, has some boilerplate stuff. That is monitoring how many visits I have. I don't know why. I don't know how I got 120, but apparently it's pretty popular. I just created it today. But let's try to go in and change the code and see what happens, right? I can go in, change the code really quick. This is Visual Studio Team Services. If anyone hasn't seen it before, it's pretty much like GitHub. It has very similar features. So success. Yay. So I'm going to commit this. Yay. And this is going to create a new build, right? Like if you're familiar with CICD, this is a pretty common way of doing things where you change your code and then that is picked up by a building tool, and that is going to create an artifact and deploy that artifact, right, to an environment that you set it. In this case, there's only one environment, but usually you would have like a development, staging, production, whatsoever. Right now you see here 3 builds. One is, the first 2 are the ones that were created when I first started the DevOps project. And this one is the one that it's just created by making that change, right? So what it's doing is it is starting by building a Docker container with all the code that I create that the DevOps project created. I didn't do any coding. Like I didn't touch that project since I did create the with the interface, right? And it's gonna build a Docker image, create a Helm package. Is anyone here familiar with Helm? No. So Helm is a packaging solution for Kubernetes. So here familiar with Kubernetes? Did I ask that already? Some people? Okay. So Kubernetes, like Wish was talking about earlier, is an orchestrator that is extremely popular these days. And it's the de facto standard for orchestration. And so we have Helm that is this packaging solution that is going to grab my code and it's going to say it might need these dependencies, it might need these services. And because it is deeply integrated with Azure, it may be like that you say, I need the credentials for this database, or I need the credentials for the key storage, and it's all going to bring it up into one package that you can use in your application. So this is going to take a minute, but it's going to build this image, it's going to deploy it into the Kubernetes cluster that I just created with that DevOps project, and it's going to deploy it to that URL that you were seeing before. Right? This is a pretty simple pipeline, right? It's just taking code, building it, deploying it. But what I wanted to do today is say, okay, what if we wanted to say, I want to scan that code before deploying it to production? That's why, we wanted to, what I was presenting with the idea of DevSecOps, right? So what you can do, so finished, so I can go here and say, maybe, oh no. Maybe Kubernetes is deploying it. Okay. Okay, it didn't work. Yay. So what I wanted to do is take a look at what the build pipeline looks like if we want to scan something in the middle, right? We don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm just going to go in here and edit the build pipeline and add a step to scan that code, right? And again, you can do this with a lot of different tools. You can do this with Jenkins. You can do this with integrated with GitHub. So it's not really depending on the STS. So I'm going to add a new agent phase here. I'm going to say security scan. And add a step that is going to be npm install. npm is the Node package manager. This is because I'm using a Node application, and I'm going to do the scans for Node. This is just going to make sure that I install the packages that my application is going to be using, right? And then what I'm going to do is use this tool called Snick. Has anyone ever heard about Snick? So Snick is a pretty new tool. It just got named Gartner Cool Technologies something. They are a dependency scanner. They're really cool because they're focused on microservices. So you can scan pretty much anything. So I'm going to add this in the pipeline, and I'm going to configure it to look for, I think just package.json is going to be fine. And I'm going to make it look at master. And my API token is not here. So let me just copy my API token. You can, steal this. Don't worry. I'm not paying for it anyway. Where's this? Nope. Here. So Sneak. This is a cool thing that VSTS has. Is it lets you store keys. So you can use them securely on your pipeline. Sneak. I'm going to make sure that it runs first before the build process. And I'm going to make that this is the phase where it actually builds the Docker image and deploys it. So I'm going to make sure that this only runs if the first step passed, right? I don't want to run I don't want to deploy something that my security scan didn't approve, right? And that's something that, again, you can do with a lot of different tools, but I think this is pretty powerful. You can make it so your code is only deployed if it passes some scans, some compliance checks, accessibility tooling. You can make it be anything. And one of the things that you can do too is make your master branch, your main branch, only available for users to push through pull requests, so no one can avoid these checks, right? I'm going to make this a Windows agent because it doesn't work on Linux. I'm not sure why. And make this pass this to security scan, and I'm going to queue a build. Okay, this is queued. And this is going to take a couple of minutes, so I wanted to see if there were any questions so far.
So from a policy perspective, so you can take the NIST policy and say, we can't deploy, this person doesn't have the right authority, they can't deploy in production.
Yep.
You showed how you have to make sure you can scan the code. Where do you put in the policy piece to say, only people with these rights, or, we've got to go through these certain steps before we actually release it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So one of the things that you have to have in place is you can set policies on the code itself, on the branch. So if you
can't pull from a public repository. It only can come from a private repository.
Well, I mean, I think that this is one of the interesting things that are happening these days, is that you can put the checks in place in a lot of different places. So you can say, I want my master branch to be the golden image, if you will. Or you can say, I want my Azure Container Registry to be my golden image. And you can use webhooks in ACR to scan everything that it gets in and like prevent something from being deployed if you're not. Or you can put in the blocks in the Kubernetes side and say nothing gets deployed unless it's coming from this path, right? So it's a design question, but there's absolutely a lot of flexibility. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
You showed like SNCC security scan.
Yeah.
Can you use like any other tools?
Yeah, let me show you. I mean, there's a couple of those that are so it failed. A couple of those that are available right now in VSTS, but there's a lot of them that you can use through agent integrations. So like you can just go in and run the scans there. Kind of find what did I mess up? So let me show you one of them, and then I'm going to fix this really quickly. Otherwise, my demo is going to suck. I mean,
Best demos always break.
So if you go to the build definition, eventually, we have, let me see if, I can just do security. All of them are security checks that you can put in place for your code. There's actually a couple more.
So that's coming from the Azure Marketplace?
It's coming from the VSTS marketplace. But you can use, again, anything that you can think of in any pipeline, right? Like I used to, on my previous job, one of the things that we used to do was do policy checks with a tool that I'm blanking right now, but you can do a lot of, you can basically, we were just doing RSpec tests on the application. So we deployed the application to a test environment, run tests like, can you do passwords that are less than 8 characters or something like that? And if you could, it would fail the build. Something like that. Any other questions? While I fix this.
What are the tools not listed here?
So you can create your own integration. And just run a command and use like if you have like an npm package, or if you have any sort of tooling that uses a service or runs locally on an agent, you can just use it there. Let me see if I can really quickly fix this. Let's just put in start, see if that works. So, and while we're here, let me just check if, am I using the right one? That would be great. Yep. So public index, I'm sorry, use. Yep, should be that.
So as you're running through that, is Helm? Like
Oh, there you go.
Got it.
Yeah. Is Helm like what?
Pack. So
Yeah.
similar.
Huh?
I mean, it is like apt.
Okay.
So Packer, I used to use Packer a lot. Packer lets you build images, right? So Helm is more like a package manager, like apt or npm or some of these tools, but for Kubernetes. So you can, one of the things that you can do is like go into the command line and do Helm install something, and you can't see anything here. Like, WordPress, and you would install it in your Kubernetes instance. And well, how am I doing on time? Am I way past? Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to mention was that Kubernetes is really cool, but there's going to be a lot of use cases where you're going to be like, why don't I use just a PaaS instance instead of running it in a cluster, if you will. And that's going to have to come to your applications, right? Like if you can get away with running on an app service environment, just running an app service environment, it's going to be a lot easier and much faster to comply with, right? You can still do the compliance checks and the build pipeline for that. But if your application is more complex, if you depend on a lot of different microservices that use a lot of different dependencies, then you might want to use something like Kubernetes. And you can deploy Kubernetes with ACS Engine on Azure Gov today. This is just making it a bit easier. It literally takes like 15 minutes to deploy the whole thing. And let me see if this actually worked. No, it failed again. I'll see what the problem is. I have a different pipeline that is actually working because, another cake. This is actually like purposely failing because it's looking at a piece of code that has a vulnerability in it. So one of the things that you're going to be able to see here is that it found a high severity vulnerability with the package that I was using, right? And this is because I put in a dependency check in place in the build pipeline. So I can go into my code and update this to the latest one. This is for Express, so I use 4.3.5, I think. The latest one is 4. Let me just check, just a second. 4.16.3, right? This is not it. 4.16.3. 5? No, 4. I'm good for it. And this is gonna start a new build again because this is using the pipeline that I had. And one of the cool things about this is that you don't have to think about the building process. It's just there, and it's always going to deploy to the right environment. And if you have your security checks in this pipeline, your developers don't have to think about security either, right? You can have your security team focused on this tooling and how to make developers productive. So your developers are productive, your security team is productive, and the whole chain is more secure and happier, if you will. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I can let this run, but it's hopefully gonna pass this time. This is running the security checks. We can wait for a minute. But any other questions?
Log all changes and you can send them out to whatever.
There's log of all changes, not only on the code but also on the build pipeline. That's a common request because, if you go in and just change it, yeah, what's the purpose of having all this? But you can set permissions on who can change the pipelines. You can set permissions on there's login of everything. I don't know if you saw it, but I had to type in what I'm changing. So there's code commits on the pipeline itself. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm wrapping it up. So now it passed the vulnerability scans because it, I just updated everything and it says like, yay. Well, thank you.